So, hi Lenny, what was your first computer?
Technically, my first computer was a piece of paper, which is kind of interesting. My dad brought me this huge drafting paper. It was the size of a wall. I had to like put it on the floor to read it. It wasn't Fortran, and that was basically a Fortran translation into the assembly and actually like a printout what it's supposed to do. And the computer actually was me. I was reading the uh, Fortran program and tried to translate it to see if it matched the output. And that was kind of my first computer because back in those days in the Soviet Union, there was no access to computers.
Oh, it was in Soviet
And
Union.
yes, I grew up in former Soviet Union. The country doesn't exist anymore.
And where was it?
This was in Kiev. Now it is Ukraine.
Oh, Ukraine. Okay, cool. So lots of
Yes,
Java conferences going on in Ukraine right now.
I know. I'm missing out so much, but I don't know if they're actually going because of this coronavirus stuff. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, they are. Most of them are no online conferences right now. So, who was
Yeah,
your father then? Like a programmer
my
or?
father's my father is not a programmer. The one and only programmer in the family so far. My father, he's retired now, but he was a mechanical engineer. And my mom was also retired now. She used to be a piano teacher.
Piano teacher, not bad. And your father with the so why he did with the Fortran is with you. So I mean, if he's a mechanical engineer, how he got the idea, doing some printouts.
Well, back then, I was a violinist. That was my career.
No
Or
kidding.
they, no, no,
Uh,
that
okay,
was
then a question to you: uh, was it your idea or your parents? So is it
it was
possible?
my idea.
No kidding.
Like I was obsessed with computers even back then. The idea of computers because I had no idea what they were. I've never seen
No, no,
one. I
I'm
have no
not about
clue.
the computers. You played violin, right?
Yes.
Whether it was your idea to start playing, the instrument, or your parents.
Oh, no, that was my
Yeah,
violin
for
was
sure. I
totally
always ask myself, is it possible that a kid will start, with some classical instrument just for fun?
some people do. It just was not me.
Okay. And what you enjoyed more? Now no one listens. So, playing violin or reading the Fortran printout?
Oh, my parents actually, the reason why my dad brought the Fortran printout was so it was an incentive for me to play. My dad's like, if you play at least 2 hours, then I'll give you the Fortran printout to read.
Hey, cool. So, and what is more fun right now? Reading Scala code or playing violin?
Well, I don't play violin anymore,
Okay.
so I don't know about writing Scala code. I haven't done
Okay.
that either.
So
So
this is just kidding. We get a lots of nice comments now in our.
yes,
So,
yes.
um, but still, I mean, before that, you should be already fascinated with computers, right? Because otherwise, the paper will be pointless.
Oh yes, I was always imagining computers because again I didn't know what they were all
Yeah, but
about.
why? I mean, how old were you with the very first idea of the computer then?
About 10.
Okay. And how you I mean, how you know there is a computer? You watched a movie or read a book or
Well, there's most likely books, maybe cartoons or
okay.
movies or something like that, but I don't remember.
Hmm.
Uh,
And with the printouts, you said it was a huge one. So how big was it? Is it like you
it
said a wall?
Yeah, it was kind of 2 meters by 6 meters.
But how your dad got it? I mean, this is unusual. So how to print something out? I mean, there's no such printer. So how he did it?
Well, they are these printers because he was a mechanical engineer, and there's these drafting printers that he had at work. So he printed it on one of the drafting printers.
Okay, but your dad didn't understood the code. He just got the
No,
code and oh, okay. So he printed just the code as a gift to you, right?
definitely yes, to force me or encourage me to play violin more.
Okay, this is really unusual.
It is.
Okay,
And
but
then, and
do you have any idea about what to do with computers before, or was your first touch with program?
well, when my family came to the U.S., after that, I got my first actual computer,
Yeah,
which
but
was a
this was after
Commodore
the printout,
VIC-20.
right?
Yes, this was way after the printout.
But
Yes.
before the printout, where does you had already a little idea, know what a for loop is or if statement? Nothing.
No, 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 not a clue.
Okay, so now, if you read the printout, Fortran, you learned something, or was it Mission Impossible?
It was at that point it was Mission Impossible, but I felt like I learned something. But it was more that I was encouraged and kind of fall in love with programming and
Okay,
computers and this kind
and
of
you
stuff.
played violin more then or not?
I don't think that quite worked. At
So
least
the
not long
strategy
term.
was not very successful, right? So
No,
it
it was
means
not.
if we have a kids and we give them a printout of, let's say, Java, which is 6 by 6 square meters, it is not very successful strategy, right?
Not long term. Maybe short term, but not long term.
Okay, so what
Any
happened?
strategy that's not kid driven is, I don't think it's not going to be viable.
Okay, so what happened after the printout?
Well, the fast forward a few years later, I got my first computer,
What was
the
it?
Commodore actual computer, Commodore VIC-20, and just like you, I was so fascinated about the peaks and pokes because it's like it was like magic. What is these magical numbers
I
and
hated the
magical
pick and
addresses?
pokes because
Yeah.
everything was learnable except the pick and pokes. So if I saw them, okay, game over. I have no idea what to do. So how old were you with the VIC-20?
About 13.
Okay, 3 years. This was already in US?
Already in US because I've never seen a computer in Ukraine.
And were they computer in Ukraine?
I think they were, but the access was so limited, especially back then,
Okay.
that there's like only a few people in the whole country had access to any kind of computers. And
Are we talking
yeah,
about 1988 or 1990 or?
we're talking about mid '80s, 1985,
Okay.
in that Fortran printout days.
And where you were in US, so New York or what was?
Yeah, in US, we came to New York in
Okay.
1988. And yeah, right after that, I got that Commodore VIC-20 and those peaks and pokes, and it was just insanely. It was just there was a lot of magic. Let's put it that way. And I did not like magic. I wanted to know how it works.
Okay.
So that computer didn't last long. The first. I never really played video games. A lot of your guests on your previous podcast, they play video games. I was never really into video games. I was never into programming video games, not into playing video games. I had my simple pleasure, which was I wanted to tell computer what to do, and it does it. And that just satisfied me to no end.
Okay.
Just even a simple hello world would satisfy me, especially if you write it in an assembly language and it takes for you a day to do it because it would crash because you would do something wrong. Obviously, all that debugging just gives me that's the stuff that gives me pleasure.
Very cool. Complete different question. So you arrived from Ukraine to US. What was your first impression of US back then? You remember that? The very first day in New York.
I do. It was very disappointing.
Oh, really?
Yes, because I thought that we were going to get picked up in a Mercedes.
Oh.
We were going to get driven into a palatial type accommodations, and we were going to live happily ever after and not worried about money at all. However, my uncle picked us up, and he picked us up
with Cadillac, not Mercedes, right?
Well, it was a Datsun.
Oh, okay.
And the Datsun had multicolored parts from multiple accidents.
Okay.
And we barely fit into the car because there's so many people. And the accommodations were a 2-room apartment for 4 people. And I had to sleep in an alcove room with my grandma. just separated by, not even separated by anything, in the living room, and my parents would sleep in the bedroom.
Okay.
So it was very disappointing for me. I thought it was the land of riches and opportunity. When I came there, I didn't speak the language. It was tough. It was tough and disappointing.
So it was actually not an improvement comparing to Russia. Was it Russia back? No, Russia. It was Ukraine. Oh, it was Ukraine, but it was Soviet Union, right?
That's right. Well, it was an improvement long term. Short term, it was definitely not an improvement.
But if you came out as a kid and you saw, New York, was it impressive for you, or to say, okay, I don't care, it's bad?
No, Kiev was a big city. I mean, it's back then it was probably over a million people.
Okay.
And Manhattan, today, but today only 1 million people live in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And the other boroughs like Brooklyn, Queens, especially back then, it was basically all low-rise housing. Not very impressive.
Okay. And okay, then what I think is, if you got, when you got the computer after that, so how long you had to wait until the first computer?
Well, the VIC-20 I pretty much got right away because I think somebody gave it to me as a present because they upgraded to Commodore 64.
But this is actually what I think is like, the great escape for you, now.
It is.
Yeah. Now, if if there's this, everything is hopeless and you get the machine, you can say, now I have time to go into it and understand everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I had lots of time. I had very, I was sitting at the computer for 15, 16 hours a day trying to figure out how to program all by myself. And it was fantastic. Of course, my parents hated it, but for me, it was fantastic.
But how you got a book or something else? Because I mean, if there's nothing, how to find out what to do? I mean, it's impossible, right?
Basically books.
Okay, if you have books, it's doable.
Yeah, BBS, there were bulletin boards. I could chat with some people, but that was definitely secondary.
But not immediately, right? If you got to USA, you got the computer, let's say, in the next 2 weeks, and then you try to find out what to do. You also got some books or just the computer?
No, I got computer and I got some books, and
okay.
I tried to figure out, English is a second language. Also, try to figure out language. It was not easy, but it was fascinating to me.
Okay, and what was your first, interesting application you wrote?
Oh, that's a tough one. I try to figure that one out, but it's like any simple thing that I make a computer work, like a computer basically submit to my will. That's a win for me.
What I remember now, because I asked the question to many guests, what I was happy with, blinking text, and actually text in different colors. So this is what I really liked, changing the color and of the font on the screen with BASIC, of course. I completely forgot that, but this was doable. I forgot what to do with the blink, but this was fairly easy.
I remember something about string concatenation. That was like, I got that to work in assembly language. That was
assembly. Okay, I started with BASIC. You started with assembly?
I started with those peek and pokes, which I really liked. I really hated all that magic.
I tried to find out with two nested for loops, but it never worked. So it worked to a point and then it stopped, or the computer crashed,
Yeah, exactly. So I started with assembly. I started after.
Wait a second. But how it's possible? Is it impossible in VIC-20 to start with assembly? You need another program, right?
No, that was after the VIC-20. I kind of gave up on that pretty. But
quickly. What you did with the VIC-20? Did you anything sensible with that or?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. So it was just okay. This was your first contact. What was your next machine then?
Yeah, I got a PC, one of those IBM PCs that somebody threw out, basically.
And when was it? When was it?
Maybe 89, 88.
So 1 year later.
It still was in 88. Yeah, somewhere in that time period.
And
that's where
it's still in the same apartment.
Yes.
Okay. So there was even more room required for a PC, I guess. You need a.
Yes.
One question is: you had the VIC-20. VIC-20 had to be connected to a TV set, right?
That's right.
And you had to share the TV set with the other parts of the family, right?
No, we got a separate TV set for the computer.
Oh, cool. So you were lucky.
Yes, I was.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, my parents did see the interest and they nurtured it a little bit as much as they stomached because I was still going to be playing violin as a profession. So they're kind of like
Oh,
trying to figure out what to do with me.
how long you had to practice violin a day?
Well, I was supposed to practice 3 to 4 hours, but
Wow.
I was lucky to practice one.
But still,
I
one is
skated
still a
by
lot.
my talent as much as I could, but at some point the talent didn't carry me far enough.
Were you actually talented or?
I was.
Okay.
I was very talented,
Okay,
if I do
cool.
say so myself.
Okay. Can you play something right now? Any instrument?
No,
Guitar or
no, I
something?
cannot. It's so embarrassing.
Okay. Yeah, it really is. I thought, at least a e-guitar or something, Jimi Hendrix style or something like this.
No, no, no. Violin is it's like for one day don't practice, it takes 2 days to get it back.
Okay. Um. Okay. So you got the PC, and then you started immediately with assembler, right?
Immediately. Like I loved assembler. I just loved being like next to the machine and basically making the computer like string concatenation. That fascinated me to no end. I would write
Okay.
different programs that did string concatenation. That was and that was
So you
that
like
was
probably
great.
Java server pages as well, like string concatenation.
No,
No. But how
not
you
today.
got how you got the idea that assembly is a thing? I mean, were you in a computer
From the
club?
book.
From the
No,
book.
I got the
Okay.
book. I got
Okay,
the
cool.
book, and that was cool, and I did that. And then I graduated to C,
Okay.
which was pretty cool. You could be more productive. And then
Wait a second.
I got
Are
my
you went to school or you were still in the apartment the whole day?
I was still at apartment all day. I went to 1 year of high school. They have it in the U.S. here, and then
Why? How is it possible that you didn't have to go to the school? Was it actually
no, I did go to school, but it was like sporadic,
okay?
just to kind of learn English. And yeah, I was an overachiever, and I knew basically the whole school curriculum. My dad taught me basically a lot of like extracurricularly. So I was really bored with high school, and I just took the high school exam and just stopped going to high school and just took the exam.
That's actually cool. And what's your impression of the school? So your very first day at school in US?
It was terrible because I didn't know any language. It
Okay.
was just very lonely.
Okay. Your colleagues were nice to you or not, or what was the?
Some of them were, some of them weren't. It was about 50-50 mix.
And any computer hackers or computer
Oh
interest?
no, no,
No
no,
one.
no, no.
Okay.
Not that I remember. Yeah.
But this is amazing that actually that it. But yeah, you were overachiever. But is it actually possible to be good at school without learning anything? No, you had to learn as well, right?
Again, I don't remember really learning much, except for in high school, I did go to the computer lab and hang out there all day. I did do that.
Okay, cool. Okay, so high school, you got your PC and you could program something in assembler. So what do you program then? What was your idea?
I remember I did a Rolodex program that was in C, and that had the like little rudimentary file database and basically a lot of stuff that you do with search. You could do basically a Rolodex.
Okay.
That was kind of my go-to program with every new language. I would say, can I do a Rolodex? Because it touches a lot of stuff. It's got a user interface.
What
It's
is
got a database.
roller? What do you say? Roller?
Rolodex.
Was it
like a address book?
okay?
Like keep people's names, addresses, and phone numbers.
Okay, like contacts on Apple, right?
Yeah, contact list, basically.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So with every new language I try to learn, I wanted to see how easy it is or difficult it is to write a Rolodex in, because you have user interface, graphical or not, you have database, you have middle tier, you have like search functionality / business logic and things like that. So it's pretty pretty business logic-y type of application to do. So I like doing that in pretty much any language I learn. I try to do that first to see how that works out.
So how many address books applications you wrote then?
Three or four,
Okay, cool.
not too many.
And the last was Java, the last one?
The last one was Java, indeed.
Okay, so you did assembler, then C, a little basic, and what you did with C? Also, of course, address book. You started, obviously.
I started with address book, and then I got a job. Basically, my parents get an ultimatum: you either go back to school or get a job. So I got a job,
Okay.
and that
Which?
job, I don't remember the company name, and I don't quite remember what they did, but it was in C. It was it was some mobile device or some embedded device of some kind. Maybe that's what it was.
Okay.
So I did that in C. So that was my first like professional program in C. And then I was about 15 years old,
This is
and
a crazy. So they
yeah,
hired you with 15. So
as,
how you convinced them that you are able to do this?
I don't know. I
Okay.
guess I guess I did. I don't exactly remember how.
Okay.
So after that, I went to work for a few financial companies where I
Hmm.
learned C++. And I think I was like you, I was a big C++ fan. And this was before any of those boost libraries. I tried to figure out with a few other people how to do smart pointers, and I thought C++ was end all and be all. Only if you figure out how to do the smart pointers, so memory management goes away, and only if you do all of that and figure out how the templates work in the compiler, then C++ would be just the perfect language, most productive language. You can write anything you want in C++, and it's just perfect. And I was under that opinion for a long, long time. And we had in one of the companies that I worked at, we had a pretty good, actually pretty productive infrastructure. And Yeah, that's basically it. I was a C++ fan, like to the max.
Okay. How you was it easy to get the jobs to the at the other companies, or you had to apply, or you were asked? You remember that? It's always interesting.
Well, I applied to the after that the consulting job, the first one when I did the C project for this embedded device. I think I applied about 25 to 20. I went to 25 interviews,
Okay.
and number 25, uh, this guy Mark took a chance on me, and he is my friend till this day. And he's an awesome guy. He took a chance on me, and that was my first job. And after that, things became a lot easier. Let's
Okay.
put it that way.
Could it be that the very first company was somehow top secret company?
No.
No, it's just you cannot remember because you say no. You remember everything except the very first job.
Yeah, I guess it was not that exciting. It was kind of scary because it was my first job. It was
Okay.
very scary.
Okay. So you did C++, and what you did backend programming, or UI user interface?
Financial backend stuff for mortgages, basically, to mortgage calculations.
Okay. So lots of calculations and database access as well, right?
Yeah,
Was it
pretty much. Yeah.
Oracle?
It was sybase back then.
Okay. I did a little bit. I remember Pro C, I think. It was the C++ interface to Oracle, so you could generate C++ code and compile it, something like this. So it was Pro C or Pre C++. It looked like. Do you remember actually SQL J?
No.
In Java, it was like it was attempt. I remember this right now. It is like mixed between JSP and JDBC. So
No,
okay, okay,
I have not used that. But I do remember learning SQL. That was everybody calls it SQL. I still call it SQL because
yes.
that's how I learned
Hmm.
it. And yeah, and I remember using Sun C++ compiler,
Hmm.
which was a big pain in the what
Hmm.
because of the template support. Because I wanted to use templates and type safety. I learned this whole type safety thing, and the type safety thing was great.
Hmm.
And all of that. Looking back at it, C++ is such a terrible language. It's way overcomplicated, and it doesn't really work to this day, unfortunately. So that's how I discovered Java. People were talking about Java back then, and I'm like, I would dismiss it as like, this thing is slow. It's a kid's language. It's interpreted. It's just no good. But I tried it. I was out of a job for a few months, and I tried it. And I got a question for you. What do you think Java's biggest advantage over C++ is, if you had to pick one or two?
Probably three. So what I remember from C++ is Java came with how we call it, C++ standard library first.
Yes.
So this was it, and C++. I had to read a book about that. I remember there was just a book about all which you have to all the data structures and stuff like that. So in Java is not entirely true, because in the very first version of Java there was no collections. I don't know when you started with Java, but at the very first version we had several collection libraries.
Yeah, I started in 1.1 with 1.1.
And I think the vectors and everything else came with JDK 1.2, as I remember. So vector was there, I think, and the Java util array list and everything else came later. So they came afterwards. So
yeah,
right, we only had vector, I think, and hash table. This is what we got with from the beginning, and
right,
and this came later. So the next thing in Java was, as I remember, the huge thing was threading, built-in threading, how it is right now. So it was easier to build backend servers because it came with built-in support. And in C++, you had to do something else, what I don't remember exactly, and this was the problem. And of course, memory.
P-threads versus not like native threads versus P-threads.
Something like this. And the last time I did C++ was before Java, and I started with Java in 1995. So I think my last line of code I wrote in 1994. So this is what I remember. And the next thing is of course memory management. So as Java started, what I was able to go into a project, I just mentioned the threading, memory management, and then I got the contract usually, because back then they were killer arguments. So this were the three things what I would see.
Right. So with smart pointers, with C++, as far as I thought back in the day, memory management was not a big deal. As a matter of fact, I thought C++ did better memory management if you do smart pointers correctly. Unfortunately, I found out later that with Java, because you have actual memory management. Did you know that in Java, memory management is actually faster than you can do in C++? Because basically in C++ you call malloc and free, and those things basically are thread locked. So in different threads, Java doesn't, because Java does its own memory management, it doesn't do thread lock. So all the memory allocations are actually faster in Java multi-threaded environment.
Yeah, what James Gosling mentioned several times, that the free is in Java, the garbage collection, if it just drops the short-lived object, is as fast as just, I think it's called free in C++. Or a dalloc or whatever the routine is. Yeah. And speed was not the issue back then, because everyone said Java is too slow. Stability. And for backend systems, this was the killer argument back then, what I remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the killer Java feature that C++ doesn't have and will never have is this. For example, let's say you have a library. If you want a binary library in C++, it's a nightmare, because you have to distribute it for every architecture, every compiler, even the different optimizations. If you turn on different optimization flags in C++ for one library and compile with somewhat different, slightly optimization flags in another library, and try to link those two libraries in your own project, the thing's going to crash at random at some point because of of the exacting nature of the optimization of the libraries. So basically, it's a nightmare creating libraries. You can't. You basically have a dead idea to create libraries in C++.
What I remember back then as well is the performance of the compiler. What I remember, if I showed them how fast Java compiler is, everyone was delighted. So impossible.
Yes.
And yes. They had to compile the whole night, and in Java it was very, very fast. It was an argument. Yes. So no. This podcast is actually nice. So I remember the old stories, war stories from back then. But what interests me more, because if we will criticize the C++, people will probably attack my podcast. We already didn't said very nice things about Scala. Scala is of course great, and C++ was even better. But back to this, what I remember, the Objective-C people also claim several times how great the reference counting is. I never believed that, but okay, interesting idea. But which you started with JDK 1.1. And you stick with JDK, or you had to still to do some C++ work after that?
Oh, I did in parallel for a little bit, but not too much. So just to get back to the point of libraries, there is a reason why Java has a huge ecosystem, and the reason is that you don't have that problem of distributing libraries in thousands and thousands of different binary forms, and then they crash at the end of the day anyway. It's just simple. You just compile your library, you ship it, and you're done. Yep. And it'll work in any Java anywhere. And that's how I believe that's why Java has this huge ecosystem that it does today, a very successful one.
And also the stability of Java itself.
That's amazing.
And I know in Germany and Europe there were lots of projects, banks and insurance companies who invested, a lot in Java from day one, and they are still happy. And this is why Java is so popular as well, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what you did with Java, what was your very first project with Java then?
I actually, financial markets have these indexes, and like S&P 500. In Germany, you have DAX, I believe.
You have NASDAQ, right? Something like this?
Yeah. So in order to compute the values, basically, in order to compute those values, you have to get the prices for all the stocks, you combine them, you apply a formula, and it's actually pretty complex. So it required for me to write out a UML diagram of what the data structures are going to be like.
Was rational rows?
First time ever. No, I just did it on a piece of paper.
Oh, of course.
But usually I can imagine this. I can imagine the stuff in my head and then write it down in this code. This way, I tried it and tried it and tried it. It didn't work. So I had to write down all of the data structures. Right now, you do it much easier with streams today, but back then it was JDK 1.3, I think. So the data structures that were available are very limited. So that was an interesting project to do that.
So were you alone on the project or no? It was a team.
I was alone. It was a small project. It took me about 2 weeks to do. So I would plug into the rest of the system.
And so you computed basically NASDAQ, right? So you were responsible.
The price of NASDAQ. Yeah.
So you were responsible for the crash, right, in 2000?
No, I wasn't working for NASDAQ. I was working for a company who tried to figure out whether to sell or buy NASDAQ depending on
okay.
what they...
I was just kidding with the NASDAQ. So, but yeah, okay. Okay, cool. And was the project successful? So what you did? So did it work? I mean, your work...
It did.
Yeah, it did. Okay, cool.
It did. A lot of things I hear even now from people that a lot of the code that I wrote is still running. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, really nice. So what was the next? Yes. Was it a server? Was it Tomcat, or was it just a library? Was it like Java?
It was just a library back then. This was before I discovered the power and elegance of Java EE.
Okay, power and elegance, cool. Hey, and of course without unit tests back then, right?
No unit tests.
This is
unit tests in production.
For finance, I will never write unit tests. What I would write unit tests a lot is getters and setters and default constructors. This is with something can go wrong. But for financial algorithms, you can just you have a feeling, you see the numbers, and you go, right.
Exactly. You test in production.
Yeah.
Deploy early and often.
Yeah. Very good. So, when was it? 2000?
Let's see.
JDK
Yeah,
1.3?
early 2000s. That was early
Before the crash.
2000s. Before the crash, yeah.
What you did when the crash happened? So, did it hit you hard? People, IT in on Wall Street, or?
Well, my contract was coming to an end, so I let it expire, and I had a girlfriend at the time, and I traveled the world with her, and
Cool.
it was nice while it lasted.
Okay. So this was the crash, and then it recovered a little bit, so you started hacking again.
Yes. I actually, in 2007, I was thinking I could do something else with my life, and I actually became an airline pilot.
Wow. So, but you became the airline pilot in 2007 or before?
2007.
And
I used
how
to
long
fly
you
as
had
a
to learn to become or to train or whatever?
I used to fly as a hobby. I started to learn in 1995. I did my first flight just as a hobby on a small plane.
Okay.
And every weekend I would try to fly as much as I could, maybe once or twice a week. I could fly. I really loved it. And I didn't know I could be an airline pilot. So in 2007, actually, before I had another contract that was ended, and I'm like, let me try this out.
So what
So
you
I
built
applied
before, what you built between, the library for NASDAQ and becoming an airline pilot. So which project you did back then?
Basically different financial projects, mostly mortgage calculators is kind of what I specialized in.
And just libraries, never a runtime.
No. Mortgage calculators are not like just basically project for a company that
So
calculated mortgages.
Services, or like a headless Java library, which is can be included as a calculation library, or more like a Java E server which exposes some stuff.
No, it was a project. Basically, you start it up, it reads the database and keeps crunching numbers and puts the numbers back in the database and on the
Okay.
screen.
So like a batch processing project, right? Something like this.
Yeah, some of it's batch, some of it's interactive with a UI and everything.
And you specialized in the algorithm, so you knew exactly how the algorithm worked.
I would do the basically what this was before Jakarta EE.
Okay.
Or I discovered that, or the companies discovered it. So this was basically kind of what Jakarta EE does. So basically, transactions, messaging, transactions, things like that.
So you were the infrastructure expert. So you specialized on the framework things, life cycle and stuff like that. So
exactly.
And you got the algorithm from your business department. They were always different.
That's right.
So this was just a lucky accident that you worked, for the mortgage people, but you could do something else. But you didn't care about the algorithms. You had your framework stuff from reading and writing to database.
That's exactly. Another a very interesting project that I did was a market making project for stocks, which is kind of easier to understand. Which is, when you trade a stock, you buy and sell from the market maker.
Mm-hmm.
So the market makers. So I did the app in the market maker that would automatically sell and buy more stocks depending on the algorithms that, again, I didn't write. But it requires a lot of real-time communications and real-time messaging, things like that. So again, I used the expertise on that. Say again?
Was it Corba IDL?
No, it was basically raw TCP send receive.
Okay.
It was not that complicated.
Okay.
It's proprietary wire protocol and all that. Try to do it as fast as possible. And I guarantee you, if I were to do it again in Jakarta EE, it would be just as fast.
Yeah. So the question is, so you had your own framework when you discovered Java E or Jakarta E or whatever, or what something different to your framework?
Well, I would always take time to learn, and I have this side project which I worked on for another company. I worked on that for actually 15 years and weekends and evenings. It was a scheduling system for trucks.
Okay.
And that one, I actually figured out that I would use Java EE or Jakarta EE Jakarta EE now, but back then it was Java EE. And that's how I tried it, and that's how I figured it out.
And how you got the idea that Java is a thing and is better than your stuff?
Internet.
Okay, yeah, but still, if you have your own framework, how to search for something else. So I mean,
I didn't really have my own framework. I had to write the bare bones framework,
okay.
or I wouldn't even call it framework. Whatever
Okay.
it needs to be written for the business logic to work. So I didn't. It wasn't really a framework. It was just whatever it needs to be written. It was.
Okay.
And I figured somebody else could do it better than I could. Especially for a small business application like this trucking scheduling system. So I decided to use it, and I fell in love because this is for the first time in Java EE, I was able to it works for the first time. You write it, and it works. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I've ever had that experience. It was the first time I could actually deploy an application and have a reasonable chance of working, as opposed to spend hours in the debugging and trying to figure out why it doesn't work.
Okay. And which server was it back then?
I started with JBoss
okay.
4.
Okay.
And so I fell in love. I tried Spring. And Spring it took I was trying it for a day and it wouldn't work. Like the database connection wouldn't work. There's some exceptions that would pop out, and I had no idea what was going on. But with Java EE and JBoss, when they started it, it worked. It just everything worked, and I didn't have to do anything. It's just all I had to concentrate on is business logic, mm-hmm. And that was a game changer for me.
And JBoss 4, I think it was already Java 5, right?
I believe so, yes.
With annotations. You didn't have to write.
Yes.
This was Java 5. So I started JBoss with JBoss 1 or 2, so I had to know to write the old code. And then with
mm-hmm.
JBoss 3, the annotations came out. So I, as a proof of concept, I wrote some stuff. So it worked really well with JBoss 4. JBoss 5 was not as nice. I think they had some problems with JBoss 5, but JBoss 4 worked well. And
speaking of which, Go ahead.
With the truck scheduling system, was it that complicated? I mean, there were probably some algorithm what is the most efficient scheduling, right? Or what was the problem or the goal of the application?
No, it was basically a CRUD application. People would just enter things, and the algorithms. There was another vendor program that would look at the database and do the actual scheduling.
Okay.
But this was basically expose the information to the people who are riding on the truck, like on the mobile website, things like that.
Okay, and the front end was probably Seam?
Nope, it was JSP at first.
Very good. Uh-huh.
And then, this is the next thing. I tried to upgrade to JBoss 5 from JBoss 4, and it was impossible. Yeah. Like nothing would work, and it just the upgrade itself. So I'm like, this is not worth it. So at that point, we switched to GlassFish.
Oh, 3.
And yes.
Mm-hmm.
And GlassFish I'm like, this is great. I can delete like half the code, because, GlassFish would do everything. So I deleted half the code. And then because of that, I decided to rework the application using HTML prime faces and omnifaces.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. That was another amazing step forward. And I couldn't believe how productive you can get, and how just the iterative nature of development. You could actually iterate and test things, and it would just work so fast, and it was just great.
And what you like the most at GlassFish? So if you started GlassFish, what you appreciated the most?
The console, actually. You can
exactly.
actually put things into the console.
Yes.
And
the admin console was the killer feature back then for me as well. So this is what I say.
Absolutely.
This is incredible. So you have the visual console where you can manage things and see the metrics, and matrix were available out of the box. In GlassFish there was I forgot how it's called. It's like a something like a flow sequence or flow control where you which invocation took how long? This was, for instance, very interesting.
Oh yeah. That was nice. That's nice.
And you stick with GlassFish then?
Stick with GlassFish and then switched over to Payara, and that brings me another job. I could actually come work for Payara for 2 years.
I didn't knew that. You worked for Payara?
Yeah, I worked for Payara for 2 years.
Cool. And when was it? It was...
And it was 2016, 17, or 17 or 18.
Hey, cool. And
so
as an airline pilot, so you started with the GlassFish, and then you had your airline pilot break, and then started with Payara over, or what was the timeline in your
Right. So I still worked for the trucking place until 2015, and then in 2016 or 17, and then I went right into Payara, and I was working as an airline pilot since 2007. So I was not having much fun because, every time you go to the hotel, the rest of the people go out drinking, and now I'm like, I go work on the trucking website on the Payara.
So this was not a real break. So this was like, you were a software engineer as a leisure, and
Yes.
your main job was the airline pilot from 2007 to 2000 when?
2007 till now.
You are still an airline pilot?
I am.
Hey, great. This is crazy. And so now it's a little bit less for flying because of Corona, right?
Yes.
So you're grounded.
I am not grounded yet, but I found out that I have back problems and they have to operate, so I'm going to be grounded since in a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
But I still have nothing on my schedule anyway till then, so I guess I am grounded.
Okay. And which machines do you fly?
Embraer 145 regional jet.
Okay, just this? Nothing else?
No, that's how airlines work. You just fly one type of plane.
Okay. And where you are flying? From New York, I assume?
No, I actually live in Lincoln, Nebraska right now. I married a nice Nebraska girl and moved out here.
Okay.
And we fly in and out of Chicago.
Just Chicago and back. This is just one main line or nothing else?
No, basically everywhere in the U.S. east of Denver, right? Like before the Corona hit. Now It's very sporadic.
And you enjoy your job as a pilot?
I do. I used to enjoy it before Corona because it was fun, and now nobody's having fun.
Okay. And
so right now it's not very enjoyable.
And how much you had to know, how much time it took to become an airline pilot?
Well, again, I started in 1995, and I flew as a hobby till 2007, and I applied and I got a job.
Oh, okay. I thought you have to go, some formal training or whatever.
I had enough hours. I accumulated 800 hours in the preceding 10 years or 11 years.
But so because I think in Germany, you have to attend Lufthansa school or something like this to become a pilot or something like that. I believe. I don't know.
I don't know. I have no idea how it works in Europe. That's all I know is that Europe has a lot more tests, and the tests are more rigorous.
Okay.
And there's like a lot more of them. That's all I know.
Ah, okay. So in US, it's just enough to know what the buttons are doing, and you can fly, right?
No, there's still a lot you got to know, but it's just you can do it on your own.
Okay.
As opposed to you need to go to some kind of program.
So and last question regarding the airplane. So how much autopilot support you get from an airplane? So how autonomous are the airplanes?
It's just like a very simple computer. You tell it what to do. It does exactly what you tell it. Rudimentary commands like turn to a heading of 180, go south, or descend to 5,000 feet, or climb to 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
That's and then a little bit more automation. You could say go to point A to point B to point C on the map here and there. So it builds like a route for you and it flies it. But computers break a lot, so you have to be always ready to take over. All the landings and takeoffs are piloted, as opposed to computer does not fly those, especially like in our aircraft, especially because it's pretty old.
And the newer one,
And
are they able to land? So the new
there
Airbus.
are,
Hmm.
yes, the Airbuses and the Boeings, they can auto land, but only at certain airports under certain conditions.
Oh, okay.
For example, yeah, only the biggest airports have those auto land systems, and also the winds have to be less than X, and things like that.
Okay. And you're still hacking code right now, or
Yes, I do.
this is amazing. And what are you writing right now?
Well, right now right now I'm preparing for my surgery, but I've got a couple of things in the pipeline that I want to do for Payara. Also, I want to restart my Payara work
Mm-hmm.
because I think the people at Payara are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, big shout out to Steve Millage. He is the best boss I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
He is really great, and that's and the code. I've never seen such a well organized piece of code that's 20 years old.
Yeah. And what do you would like to do with Payara right now? So I mean, for my understanding, so you are pilot, but are you a freelancer? So are you writing?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you can just you building a code for companies and you're selling your consulting work or your software or whatever, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's very similar to my job, but I'm not a pilot. So that's the only difference.
There you go.
Very good.
Exactly.
So what are you thinking about right now? So what are you building or what's your interest?
Okay. So there's one, there's a hazelcast, Payara hazelcast integration
Mm-hmm.
that is, that needs enhancements. That's going to be the first thing that I'm going to do. And then there's some grizzly work that I'm trying to do with HTTP2.
Mm-hmm.
To fix that up, because it's not in the best condition right now, and nobody seems to be able to debug it and fix it because it's an intermittent problem, things like that. So just pick up things that aren't working or aren't working well enough, and fix them up.
But still, to fix HTTP2, you need a use case which uses HTTP2. Or you just, seeking for problems and searching for problem and just solve them randomly. So, I mean...
Yes. The difficult problems, I kind of like specialize in the more difficult problems that people can't seem to resolve. And, get in there with a debugger or write test cases and load tests and things like that, and just getting it to break consistently and then figuring out where it's broken and fixing it.
That's interesting. Because usually I'm a little bit different. So I'm more use case driven. So what I do in my work, you will see also my blog and usually reflected somehow in my leisure activities. But I try to be efficient with my time. So what it means is if I do several projects on the back end, I will probably to do something in my leisure which is back end related. Then if I get front end projects, I focus a little bit more on the front end. So try to keep the ramp up phase as short as possible. So this is what I'm doing. But it seems like you're thinking different. So, okay, you just pick a problem and try to solve it and then move to the next one, right?
Yeah, I like it. I like to jump around, and I like to do like a big project. But right now in my life, this is not a phase of my life to do that at this point.
Okay. And are this, like also commercial project what you're doing right now, or just hobby?
No, right now I'm just right now there's a couple of things I want to do with Payara, and maybe something else after that, but I don't have any clear plans.
Okay.
But right now I've got surgery coming up, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. So
you're nervous about that?
I'm very nervous about that.
Okay, so I think it will go well.
I think so too, because it's my first experience with healthcare at all.
Okay.
So it's I've never been to a hospital. I've never been, butchered.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's very tough. Can I ask you a couple of questions?
You could.
Okay. So did you invent BCE? Where did BCE come from?
The boundary control entity. So I invented something different and it was terrible. So I wrote a German book, like Java E5 patterns, and I used my own names. and this was the worst idea ever because the names were facade behavior, I think, or facade domain and something on data. Oh no.
Yeah.
I forgot the middle.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same semantic like BCE, but with my names per accident. And in every project I've worked as a consultant as you, I had, to justify the names, and everyone came up with better names, and I hated that because I had to argue 1 hour about the stupid names. And then I found or remember from UML, from rational rows actually, the boundary thing, and found the boundary control entity, and it was originally actually implemented for the front end, but it fit exactly the idea of my custom names. And then I did the boundary control entity, and I just pointed the people to the, I think it was Ivor Jacobson, to the old book from him. Say, look, there is a boundary control entity called robustness diagram from agile modeling. Go to the page agile modeling, you will find that. And then the discussion stopped. So this was my way to hack a system, because I never ever had to justify the names. I don't like the control name. I hate that. But I never had if someone said, okay, why controls, like, no idea, go read the book and leave me alone. And it worked amazingly well. And from the Airhacks TV, I got just nice responses. So some people complain, is okay, this is not nice names. Okay, what we can do, the icons are done, but semantically it seems to work.
I see. Because I didn't know where it came from, but it always, I used this, I did the same thing you did. I did exactly the same pattern, but with different names.
Yeah.
And everybody, it's like every Java EE project that has any sort of forethought into it has the same kind of layout.
Yeah.
I just like, but I was always wondering, whenever you started mentioning BCE on the podcast and the Airhacks TV, I'm like, boundary of what?
Yeah.
That was always my question. But boundary between what and what doesn't make the boundary name to me makes no sense.
Yeah.
Control, you could be Spring Controller or whatever. Boundary.
Yeah. And the boundary
no
was at the beginning of the it was the boundary between the user and the use case. It was the use case boundary. So I remember right now the old books, it was like where the user communicates with the system. And for me, the boundary on the back end is exactly the same. It's where we get, the traffic from front end, usually. This is the boundary. And the funny thing is, people told me, what you're talking about is not ECB or BCE. Actually, the origin name is ECB, but BCE, the cool story is the BCE the killer feature of BCE pattern is if you do boundary control entity, it gets sorted correctly in the IDE. Boundary comes first, then C and the E. And this is lucky accident because my inventions were wrong. I think because it was not, alphabetically sorted. And this is not just nicer. So this is what the BCE is.
I see.
And this was actually the idea behind. And it works well. And what I asked myself, were the others, strange, structure things are coming. So what I saw, a project was structured like, DAOs, mappers, exceptions, and this was like, and this was actually no structure at all. It's like you would just have. We could even structure the project. These are the interfaces, these are classes, and this is something else. It's like complete, pointless.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I got a couple more questions for you. What do you think of? I've heard you on the podcast lots of times, not lots of times, but sometimes you mention just copy the code, and I'm like, Adam, I agree with most of the things that you're saying, but copying the code is no. Like, I'm a big fan of the DRIVE principle. Don't repeat yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear people that are any kind of influence say, "Oh, if you don't like it, just copy it, copy the code," I cringe.
Okay.
What do you say to that?
So I cringed as well, but for the last 10 years, I find out it is better, but thoughtfully, copy the code. It's not like copy and forget, but copy, make it work, adapt, and clean it up. So this is what I mean by copy. It's not like you copy random code from Stack Overflow and hope it will work. This is not the point. But and in your project, copy the code. Why? Because I work with lots of developers who tried to create the perfect system, and they spent a lot of time, at the beginning, abstracting classes, interfaces, and it took a lot of time. And the problem is, even if it was right, they were wrong from the business perspective, because as the project moved on, we learned about the project and we find out the abstractions were wrong. So for me, the dry comes last. So if we already understand the domain, then we can actually create the perfect system. By the way, today I had a session with one of my clients and we talk about microservices. And I say exactly, just forget microservices. We build a monolith first. You know about the business logic, and then we will get some ideas. We will extract, the code by copy and pasting and creating a microservice. So I think it is just easier, and you are more, free to copy the code, but keep it simple. And I think it is better to copy and code and keep it simple than try to be dry and create, useless abstractions and generate a lot of code.
I agree with the useless abstractions. There's definitely been a lot of that, but in my experience, I've seen, if I were to pick I've seen something like 5,000 line function that is basically repeat of the same thing with the changes, with a little change here and there.
Oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. But
yeah. This is what I'm talking about.
But I never saw this for, I think the last time I saw something like this is probably 10 years ago. And what I see right now in my code reviews is more over-engineered code. Everything is dry, but it's pointless. I mean...
Yes. All I'm saying is that there's a middle layer. There shouldn't be... I agree with you. There's a lot of over-engineering going on, and that's bad. But I think when it comes to more junior, I don't know if I don't like. There's nobody like junior programmer. But
wait a second, just a second. With the BCE and ECB, so and the copying the code is also a kind of a social hack, because in the projects people ask me what's my opinion about, now it's less OSGI, or what's my opinion about modularization, CQRS, and all the stuff. And I say, I just copy the code, and then the discussion stops, That's what are you talking about? And then we just focus on the real things. So this is keep it simple. KISS, I think, is keep it simple is the most important thing, because we as developers, tend to build things without thinking about why. We optimize if we don't recognize that whatever we're doing is completely pointless.
Absolutely. Especially in Java. You have no idea until you measure.
Yeah. And this is what can kill us, because we try in Java to have abstracted everything, and people from JavaScript, Python, or we just, or PHP or Perl, which write us a simple system in a fraction of time, and they will win.
I agree. Speaking of microservices and over engineering, so I always back in one of the systems that I developed was a ultra fast proxy server before things like HA proxy existed and all that stuff, and I did a lot of benchmarking and a lot of measurements of because we came to a head to build a blocking system or a non-blocking system. So people don't realize the moment you go non-blocking, your performance drops by half. And let me explain why. Let's say you have if you go down to the low level non-blocking IO. What needs to be done is you need to fill in your data structure with your file descriptor data structure with all the file descriptors that are there. You have to call some version of a select loop. And then you have to do the same thing in the operating system, because let's say you filled up 100 file descriptors, select a loop came back with here, you got a read on one. So you go in and then you go read off that one file descriptor. Guess what that does? that goes into the operating system, and the operating system has to do the exact same thing, repeat the same thing, and say, do I have any data from that file descriptor? Yes or no? If yes, I fill in the buffer. If no, which in this case it would be yes. So the bottom line is the act of filling in those data structures with the file descriptors to figure out to do that and go through a select loop does basically kills your performance.
Yes.
So if you're thinking that you go in and you do everything non-blocking, and then you can handle 10,000 simultaneous clients and requests with one server, it's basically we're going from threads, which the system was meant to do, to something like Windows 3.1 cooperative multitasking. This is how I see this whole non-blocking thing. So I feel like there are alternatives to that, and that's something that I want to be working on that combine the intent of non-blocking with an actual blocking architecture that operating systems were meant to do. And for now, if I were writing a system from scratch, I wouldn't jump on this whole non-blocking bandwagon. The first thing I would do is tune your stack size. So the actual memory that the threads are used, threads are resources just like anything else. Yeah. So the biggest thing about threads is your stack size. Mm-hmm. So if you crunch down the stack size to as much as possible, you will be able to do blocking regular architecture, your 10,000 threads, simultaneous threads, which never happens unless you're Amazon anyway.
Yeah, wait a second. There's story about that. So you are right, but it's a different, I would say, different problems what we have. So the people suspect application servers of being slow, and the truth is also a nice story with GlassFish v3. Back then, I was hired by a project, and they actually, so the first sentence was, can you help us, to build an infrastructure which scales like Google? And I said, okay, we could probably do that, but this is implications. So, nothing should block and so forth. As this is complete different architecture what you imagine, but you could scale, but this is the price. And end of the story was, of course, they didn't need this, but at the end of the story, we had 4 GlassFish v3 in production, and they handled sustainable load like several thousand transactions per second, and it was faster than they actually imagined, So the all odd architecture without any non-blocking. So it was we just used request response. So this was the first thing, and this is what I also my problem was also. As I mentioned, Scala and the other languages came out. So I thought in one point of time, Java E will be not fast enough, and I will have to use something else. And I will happy to drop Java E, because it's then boring, and learn something else. Unfortunately, the J2E and Java E was always fast enough in my projects. So there was no opportunity to do something else except for fun. But you can have fun in leisure. You don't have to have, you don't have to experiment in projects. So, and another project, which was more what you are saying right now, was also GlassFish v3, was an insurance company. What they did is they had backend mainframes, and the use case was if someone selects something in the mainframe communicated with a custom server, and the server had an open HTTP connection. This was like replacement of WebSockets, and then it pushed or just closed the connection or dropped the connection, and then the data was pushed to the client, and the client reopened a new connection. So we had several thousand standing connections to emulate WebSockets.
Right.
Yeah, and it was called Comet back then, I think. It was not Ajax.
I remember.
Comet, right? It was It was not like Ajax. Yeah, and they built a custom custom socket servers, and I remember there was like 10 or 20 of them to handle the load. And the cool story is, on one day with GlassFish v3 and non-blocking IO with asynchronous servlets, async support, we were able to replace everything. So there was one server which managed all the thousands of threads. Yeah, it didn't have to be fast. It only had to consume less memory. This was the trick, because all the waiting connections didn't have to have our threads. So
Yeah,
the non-block,
exactly.
so the non-blocking stuff I always use not for performance, rather than for waiting. You don't have to acquire a thread. This was my use case.
Right, right. And also, you don't have to do that because you have your asynchronous servlets, which will do that, and all the application servers have the right queuing, and with a managed executor service, or even
Yeah,
asynchronous EJBs, you can do all that,
yeah,
and no problem.
no problem at all. So and if you watch the AXTV, I get sometimes the questions where I show them the trick with async response, but I barely use in my projects because more code. So keep it simple and stupid. Request response blocking, and you are golden. And if this is not
Exactly.
enough, then do the non-blocking stuff.
However, speaking of, if you first of all, you got to remember, if you start doing non-blocking, your performance drops by half
But it
immediately.
still won't matter in my projects, because usually we have a kind of database, in the backend. If you hit the database,
Yes,
no one cares about the front-end performance.
yes. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're trying to do non-blocking, and you can measure it more easily if you just wait for fibers to come out.
Yeah,
Once fibers comes out, I truly believe then you can just turn it off and on, and then you can see what the performance is going to be. Then what people are going to find out that it's actually worse with non-blocking.
let's see. Yeah, but different use cases probably.
It is. There's lots of different use cases for lots of different things. But if you're starting we need a non-blocking architecture today, I would say, in the future, you want to be Google, okay?
Yeah,
So I would say wait, and in the future, by the time you'll be Google, fibers are going to come out, and then you can see whether it's actually going to work for you or not.
yeah,
All,
exactly.
all I'm saying is don't rewrite all your code, and then fibers come out, and then you'll be like, this is a use case for fibers. This is not. This is a lot better. It's just going to be a lot better that way.
Never rewrite your code. I only know
Exactly.
what I wanted to tell you is, for instance, that I really cannot remember in a project where EJBs were too slow.
No, me neither.
Never. And I heard in conferences they don't scale. It's like, what do you mean by not scaling? I mean, this is just an interceptor around a class with a thread. How they cannot scale? What do you mean by not scaling? Never got an answer. And since now they are fast, and with Quarkus probably the first time CDI can be comparable as fast as EJBs, but they were always fine. The problem was transactions blocking, deadlocks. This is the real problem, but not so. Yeah. And people just like to optimize without a reason. So I saw projects where they cached like crazy and they got a problem. They asked me, they called, they thought I can help them with cache. What I did, I deactivated the cache and problem was solved. They had no stellar performance, and it turned out all the optimizations they did was for nothing. So this is,
exactly.
Yeah. So
I got one more question for you. I got one more last question.
Last question, and then I could re-invite you and talk, more specifically about Java, so that we can do it in the future.
Sure. But I do you want to answer one more question? You want to leave it for next time?
No, just do it.
Okay.
If this is an important question, go.
Yeah. What do you think about Project Lombok?
Oh, Project Lombok.
Yes.
Great project, great code, and a little bit problematic for commercial projects. Why? If you go to Project Lombok, you will find that this is a group called Switzerlot or something like this. And if you go to commits and contributions, you will find that there are actually two main committers. What Lombok is a code generator. So what it means is it has to be compatible with JDK and JVM. So what it means is, what can happen is that JDK 15, 16, 17, 20 comes out, and the Lombok people will have no time to migrate their code to JDK, and you are stuck. And I don't like the idea of being stuck. And what happens if the two main committers of Lombok, they lose their interests in Lombok, and they do Kotlin bok or Scala bok or any kind of other bok, and what we do then? I mean, will you just take over the project? You probably could, because you say, okay, this is a challenge.
No,
but
this is one that's beyond me.
But
I would say
I personally, I have really no interests on porting Lombok to something else. There's a lot other stuff to do, and therefore, if I would, for instance, so this is Lombok is a little bit very passionate thing, but I can. Very similar answer. 5 years ago, I got lots of questions regarding Google Web Toolkit. And I say, okay, regardless how great this is, if this breaks, I cannot help you. I mean, this is like, Java to JavaScript compiler, and I don't believe in it. It is way too complicated, way too slow, and we're completely, depending on this project. And the people, it will never die. Google is like, okay, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I can just tell you, I'm not. I have not the resources to understand, what's going on inside. And comparing to application servers are simple. I mean, people expecting the application servers is black magic. Not. You can really debug the entire stack. It is not that complicated comparing to GWT or Lombok, I would say, right? So that's my point. So if you are building something for your own, go with Lombok. But to generate some getters and setters or logging statement, I don't think Lombok is, the game changer there, because I don't write a lot getters and setters anyway. But in one project, I actually said Lombok could help us because it was lots of entities and they had to be cached.
Exactly.
And with Lombok, we wrote equals and hash code very consistently. And I say, okay, go with the Lombok. And if this breaks, we will de-Lombok the code.
Yeah,
we will get, then we have this is our escape. But this was only one project. In all others, I see the Lombok completely boring. They are generating default constructors, builders, and getters and setters, and they don't even use it. In most, they just generate it because they can, and this is what I don't get.
Well, to correct you, Lombok is not like just to so the audience gets the full picture. Lombok is not a code generator; it's a bytecode generator that runs transparently during your compile. You don't get any extra Java files.
No,
because I hate code generation that generates Java files. I believe you do too, because that's just the recipe for disaster.
Yeah. But it has to be hooked in the Maven build process, and this is code which you don't see.
Yes, it's bytecode basically. It's generated bytecode.
Yeah,
yeah. So I like Project Lombok because again, as soon as you start needing to write equals and hash code, that's it. It's a game changer right then and there. And just as you said, if for some reason the two committers stop working on it, you can always do Lombok, and basically you're done. So I think the risk is very limited. And the reward is that I also used a lot of like delegates. Instead of writing dynamic proxies, you do statically typed delegates. And there's a lot of things that make it look more like Groovy, which I actually like Groovy. So I'm a big fan of Lombok, and there's a lot of negativity that surrounds it.
Oh, really? I think I was the only one who is so negative, because I don't think it's negative. So if you are alone in a project with Lombok, I wouldn't care. The problem is if you have team and you are hired, to develop a project with Lombok. So what it means is if this team is ready, to go with the project and they're in production, and other team will take over, they also have to accept the Lombok. And this is the same political decision like ECB and the naming,
Yeah. So it is.
So if you're leaving the Java path and you start with Groovy, let's say, and I have to say I like Groovy the most, and the reason is because you can start like Java, and then you can optimize, but you can write Java compatible code, which is great. So I actually use also Groovy the most as scripting languages, Groovy and then JavaScript.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but this is for specific cases. But Groovy was really nice, or it still is. And but I'm a consultant in projects, so what I have to do is to have some arguments which 100%. Otherwise, I would just have to convince everyone. And my strategy is always start with Java first. If this is not enough, we pick Java. If it's not enough, then
which is correct.
And then if Java is not enough, and then Lombok, we have to have specific use cases for Lombok. And use cases not get a setter rather than equals hashcode, whatever you said, delegate, but then you have to use it. And if you show me, I can save, that much work and produce consistent behavior, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever I saw in my code reviews was, nothing. They just used Lombok because they found it somewhere, and then I'm against. Exactly the same, Jakarta Commons, lang, or whatever. I don't accept the fact, to use Jakarta Commons lang just to have an empty string or two string. I don't care. But if you show me, okay, this particular case, we use it, we need it, then it's okay. No?
Yeah.
I wish you all the best with your surgery.
Thank you.
So, and
I appreciate
it. Where people can find you on the internet. So do you have, your Twitter, your...
Yeah, I got my Twitter, L Primac, Primak.
Okay.
That's basically the best way.
Cool.
I guess. I don't know.
So thank you.
I'm kind of new to Twitter.
And if you're still alive after the surgery, at one point of
I will be.
in one point of time, we invite you back and have a chat without introduction, just about nice Java things.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you doing the podcast. I think it's a great service to the industry that you're doing, and I like your. That's how I know about you, from your YouTube videos, and I think this is the YouTube videos that you do is the magic without the magic, and it's when you see how like quickly and quote unquote magically, and it's just so simple, it just changes your mind about things and just opens up new worlds for people who didn't know before.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And the story between podcasts is because, we don't have to prepare, right? This is my hack. So if I ask you everything, then I don't have to prepare before. I don't know, I only know you are a nice and interesting guy, and let's see what happens. So, and between Java people, it is really easy to talk with them. So this is the finding. And what I really hate, prepared interviews, because they are not authentic. So if I would send you questions up front or whatever, I also didn't knew that what you're asking me here about, Lombok or whatever, is just more fun, as it should be. Thank you. All the best. And hear you next time.
Thank you. You too.